58 participants. Birthday. Ma'am didn't come still.
Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning,
Good
students.
morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Yes, please mute yourself.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, good morning. Please mute yourself, everyone. Yes, in the previous classes, we have discussed about the classification of the nervous system, right? So we have discussed about the classification. The first one is the central nervous system, and the second one is peripheral nervous system. Under central nervous system, what have we studied? The brain and spinal cord. Under again the brain and spinal cord, I have just given the introduction for the spinal cord, and I have explained about the brain. That is 3 parts of brain: hindbrain, midbrain, as well as forebrain, right? And the peripheral nervous system, we have discussed about the spinal nerves as well as the cranial nerves. So as per the previous class, so we will just go in detail about the spinal cord. So what is the introduction I have given for the spinal cord? Where it is present, from where? It is the extension of the medulla oblongata.
Medulla oblongata.
Till this, that is lumbar vertebrate. Till the lumbar region, we can say that particular region is nothing but the spinal cord, right? Next, what is the function? What is the function of spinal cord?
Body balance.
Yes. Otherwise, you can also say it controls the reflex action.
Reflex action.
Yes, and one more point is it conducts the nerve impulses. All the electrical impulses will be carried from the brain as well as to the brain, to as well as from the brain. So we will study the structure of spinal cord. So in the previous class, we have studied about the structure of the brain. The same way we will study the structure of the spinal cord. Still some have been not muted, some are still talking. Yes, who is this Vivo 1908? Please mute yourself. Danik.
Please mute yourself, Ante.
Danik, mute yourself. Yes, in the previous class, we have discussed about the structure of the brain, wherein we explained about the skull meninges, right? As well as the cerebrospinal fluid. The same way here also, we will explain about the structure of spinal cord. When you come across the structure of the spinal cord, you can see the structure, which is made up of a bony structure, right? Which protects the spinal cord. Completely the bone, which is present, which again provides a protection for the spinal cord. The second one is the meninges. Meninges is nothing but the protective layer. This also I have explained in a previous class itself. The meninges is nothing but a protective layer or the membrane which covers the spinal cord. The next one is the cerebrospinal fluid, again which protects from the shock, right? So this is the basic introduction I have given, that is for the structure of spinal cord. So we will study the cross section of spinal cord. And maybe some of you have a question, so why are we studying the structure of spinal cord and it is not there in our textbook? For your reference, it is clearly for the reflex action as well as for the reflex arc. We are mentioning about the spinal cord because the electrical impulses gets transferred to the spinal cord whenever the reflex action or the reflex arc takes place. That is why we have to study the spinal cord. Then only you can clearly understand. So what do you mean by reflex action as well as reflex arc? So coming to the cross section, when you come across the cross section, you can see the cross section of the spinal cord. Can you see here the spinal cord structure, which is having the motor nerve, which is having the motor root, which is having spinal nerve, the sensory root as well as sensory nerve. Just observe the structure. I'll explain. Can you see the structure here, which is having a brain stem from the brain till the lumbar region? We say it is a spinal cord, and this is a cross section, that is a front as well as the back section of the spinal cord. Again, I will show you the video, you will understand it clearly. Yes, when you come across this section, this is again a cross section of the spinal cord. So wherein I'm going to explain you this cross section now. The first one is, we are explaining the cross section. First one is a dorsal horn. So you can see here the dorsal horn. What is the function of dorsal horn? This dorsal horn is responsible for carrying the sensory nerves. So all the sense organ, whatever the sense organ sends the electrical impulses, that will be accepted by this dorsal horn. When you come across the dorsal horn, all the sensory nerves, that is, as I said, from the sense organs, all the electrical impulses from the sense organ will be received by the dorsal horn. So coming to the next one, this is a ventral horn. So this is connected to the motor nerve. And when you come across a motor nerve is nothing but which carries the responses from the spinal cord to the organ. So ventral horn is the one which plays a role in carrying the responses from the spinal cord to the organ. Dorsal is from the all the electrical impulses from the sense organ, and ventral is from the spinal cord to the organ. And when you come across the matter, here I have mentioned you the white matter. There is a gray matter as well as white matter. So which helps in the gray matter, which helps in both the sensory as well as the motor information, as well as the white matter, which acts as a central canal. So can you see here that is a gray matter as well as white matter. So both this gray matter as well as white matter, which helps in carrying or processing both the sensory as well as motor information. Where are the sensory as well as motor information are present? They are present in the dorsal horn as well as ventral horn. So very important parts of the spinal cord is the dorsal horn as well as ventral horn, and this entire structure in the center, I'm moving the cursor here. So this is nothing but the white matter. This is white matter and this is a gray matter. Can you see the color? The spinal cord structure, inside you have a gray color structure, that is a gray matter, and surrounding that is nothing but the white matter. Is that everyone clear with the structure of spinal cord? The dorsal horn, the ventral horn, the center portion is nothing but the gray matter, which helps in processing both the sensory as well as the motor information, and this is a white matter which acts as a central canal for all the electrical impulses. So this is the complete, that is the structure of the spinal cord. So when you come across the spinal cord, we will explain about the first one is the region where it is present. The first one, that is medulla oblongata to the lumbar region. And coming to the second point, what is the second point you will explain? The second point you will explain about the nerve impulses, all the nerve impulses from as well as to the brain, it is carried by with the help of this, that is the spinal cord, and it helps in the reflex action. When you come across the structure, we will explain the structure as which has a vertebral column which is made up of the bones which provides protection, and meninges, nothing but after the skeletal system or the bony structure, inside there is a 3-layer membrane that is called as meninges. After the meninges, we have the cerebrospinal fluid, that is nothing but a fluid which is filled between this, that is a bony structure as well as meninges. There is a space between the bony structure as well as meninges. There the space will be filled, that is called as the cerebrospinal fluid. When you come across cross section, we will explain about the dorsal horn, ventral horn, the gray matter as well as white matter. Dorsal horn, I said, the impulses, all the electrical impulses from the sense organs will be received by the dorsal horn. And when you come across a ventral horn, all the electrical impulses from the spinal cord to the organs will be done with the help of the ventral horn. When you come across the gray matter, the gray in color is a gray matter surrounded by white matter. Gray matter helps in processing both the sensory as well as motor information. When you come across this white matter, it acts as a central canal for all the process which is done in the spinal cord. So is that the spinal cord, the structure of spinal cord clear? Everyone is clear with the structure of the spinal cord?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, can you please tell the function of dorsal horn again, ma'am?
So just a minute. Dorsal horn is nothing but wherein it receives all the electrical impulses from the sense organ. The sensory nerves are being present in this dorsal horn. Those sensory nerves, they bring all the impulses from the sense organs. So whatever the impulses are present in the sense organs, all these sensory nerves brings the information and it is passed through this dorsal horn. And ventral horn, as I said, from the spinal cord to the brain. So which is the nerves present? Here the motor nerves is present. Sensory nerves in the dorsal horn, motor nerves in the ventral horn. All the information from the spinal cord to the brain with the help of the motor nerves, that will be carried to the ventral horn. Then only we will do the reflex action. That is a sudden response to the stimulus is done with the help of the sense organ. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
I'll just share a video for this. You can just watch a video.
There is some action.
One example for the reflex action. Please observe this video.
There are some actions that you perform without even.
Yes, everyone is able to watch the video with the screen.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please observe.
These are called reflex actions. Well-known reflex action is the knee jerk. Hit the knee in a particular spot and you can't help lifting your lower leg. So what's actually happening? First, stretch sensors in the muscle detect a sudden change. A nervous impulse travels along a nerve to the spinal cord. It passes through the spine, back down the leg, and causes the muscle to contract. Electrodes on the thigh pick up any electrical activity. Scientists use the trace on the oscilloscope to work out the speed of the response. The pathway taken by a nervous impulse during a reflex action is called a reflex arc. The impulse travels in an arc through the spinal cord. It bypasses the brain, which means you don't even think about it. Reflex actions happen so quickly because they travel by the shortest route.
So is the video, is it clear about the reflex action?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So have you observed the electrical impulses? As I mentioned, how it travels through the spinal cord. The spinal cord plays a major role in the reflex action. The pathway wherein this arc travel, that is in the reflex form, we say that is nothing but a reflex arc. This is a complete explanation for the spinal cord. How does the reflex action takes place? First, the main organ responsible will be the spinal cord. For studying this reflex action, we need the complete structure of spinal cord. That is why we have studied the structure of spinal cord in detail so that you can understand the reflex action. So now we will study what is this reflex action. As per you watched the video, right? So that is one example for the reflex action. So how the reflex action takes place. So now we will study how does the reflex action takes place. I have clearly represented in the flow chart. You can see the stimulus. What is that stimulus? What do you mean by stimulus? Response to stimulus.
Ma'am, something that prompts us to do the action.
Yes, that is nothing but the action. For example, if there is a hot object in front of you, what you will do suddenly, you gradually remove your hands, right? You will not, you want to touch the hot object. No, you gradually remove your hands. That is nothing but the stimulus. That particular stimulus will be absorbed by the receptor organs. That is nothing but the sense organs. The sense organs are responsible. The flow chart follows. Then then that sense organs, the electrical impulses will be carried on through the sensory nerves. Now we are clear why I am explaining dorsal horn. So we are coming about the dorsal horn. So dorsal horn, the main function of dorsal horn is, what is the main function of dorsal horn? Just
Carrying the sensory
Impulses.
Yes, carrying the sensory impulses, right? From the sensory nerve itself, through the dorsal horn, it reaches the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, what happens? The processing takes place at the gray matter. What is the main function of gray matter? Gray matter plays a role in both the sensory as well as motor neuron. It processes both the information. So through the spinal cord, the processing takes place. After that processing, again the electrical impulses transfer through the ventral horn. So ventral horn indicates that is the information from the spinal cord to the organs. It has to pass through the organs. How does it transfer through the organs? Through the help of motor nerves. It reaches the effective organs, or else it is the muscles. Then you suddenly respond. Is the mechanism clear? Once again, I'll explain. Please listen. The stimulus is nothing but that is the sudden response or the sudden response wherein you observe. For example, touching a hot object. So when you see that particular example, what happens is the first one, it reaches the sense organs. Sense organs, eye, skin, or the receptor organs, sense organs. Through the sense organs, there will be a sensory nerves present. With the help of sensory nerves in the dorsal horn, what happens? The electrical impulses will be received through the dorsal horn. Again, what happens? It is carried out through the spinal cord. So in the spinal cord, the processing of both the sensory as well as motor neuron takes place, and that has to be carried to the next one through the ventral horn. So in the ventral horn, you know, that is processing wherein only the electrical impulses gets transferred from the spinal cord to the other organs. So that is done by the motor nerve. From the motor nerve, what happens? It reaches to the particular organ, that is our hands. For example, touching a hot object is our hands. Therein it reaches the muscles. So suddenly what we will do? We will remove our hands. So is that clear? That is why I explained you. So without knowing about the dorsal horn as well as ventral horn, so you cannot understand the mechanism of reflex action. So is that clear? Dorsal horn, wherein sensory nerves are involved, electrical impulses from the sense organs, and ventral horns is the motor nerves, wherein the information from the spinal cord, it reaches the organs. Gray matter, sensory as well as motor, both the information is processed, and white matter is nothing but the central canal where all the process will be carried out. So mechanism, is the mechanism clear, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
So based on this mechanism, again you will watch the complete detail of the cross section of the spinal cord with a video. I'll just show you the video.
Reflex action. And reflex arm. Whenever reflex action and reflex arm. Whenever we happen to come close to an object that is capable of harming us, we immediately withdraw the part of the body that is the most vulnerable. When a person touches a hot gun, sensory receptors in the hand send a stimulus via the afferent pathway, which contains afferent neurons, to the spinal cord. The afferent neurons enter the dorsal nerve root of the spinal cord. The stimulus is passed onto the efferent neurons, travels the efferent pathway to reach the effector organ, in this case the muscles of the arm. As a result, the hand is quickly pulled back. The brain is not involved in the reflex actions, as it will take more time for the impulses to travel to and fro from the brain. The afferent neurons or receptors, taking the causal stimulus to the CNS, the spinal cord, the efferent neurons or effector, the exciter neurons, and the action performed in response to the stimulus together form the reflex arm.
So the same structure was explained, right? The spinal cord structure was explained with an example. So is the structure of spinal cord with the examples, is it clear? You want me to explain again this the cross section of spinal cord, because dorsal nerve, ventral nerve, that is the gray matter and white matter, that is very important for the mechanism of reflex action. If you just remember this flow chart, if you write this flow chart itself, you will get the marks. Instead of explaining, if you mention this flow chart, you will get the marks. So again, can you see this is one more reflex action as per your textbook? If Yashasvi Vinod, please mute yourself.
Ma'am, can you show the flowchart once again, ma'am?
Yes, Gopi Krishna, mute yourself. Yes, can you see the flowchart? The stimulus. Next one is the receptor organ, that is the sense organ. Then it is through the sensory nerves, it reaches the dorsal horn. And from the dorsal horn, it comes to the spinal cord. There the processing takes place. That is, gray matter is responsible for both the motor as well as the sensory information. From there, it comes to the ventral horn. In the ventral horn, you already know the motor nerves are present. Through the help of motor nerves, it reaches the particular organ or else affective organ, and wherein it reaches the muscles, and suddenly you respond to the particular stimuli. Again, one more representation, and you have to just know to draw this drawing. That is a reflex action which is there in your textbook. One is a brain drawing and one more is the reflex action. So whenever it is asked, you can just write in the form of flow chart, or else you can also explain with the diagrammatic representation. You can also explain.
They'll ask us to draw this, ma'am.
Yes. So if they ask you to explain with a diagrammatic representation, you have to just give one example wherein you can see the sensation of touch here. So how does it react? So as per your textbook, what drawing is there? If you draw, that is sufficient. Or else you can also explain in the form of flow chart. If they ask you to draw, then only you will draw. Otherwise, you can just explain with the help of flow chart. So can you identify the structure here? So that is a sensation of touch, right? Can you see the green as well as the blue colors? So you have a ventral root, that is ventral horn, otherwise dorsal horn, white matter, but here there is no color mentioned over here, but the previous drawing you can identify it very clearly. This is how the electrical impulses get transferred from each organs. So now, which is the main organ responsible for the reflex action?
Spinal cord.
Yes. What about the brain? Whether brain is involved in the reflex action?
No, ma'am.
Yes, it is not involved. As you know, it takes a time for sending the electrical impulses gets transferred from the spinal cord to the brain. So the spinal cord is the main organ responsible for the reflex action. So when you come across the reflex action or the reflexes, so there are two types of reflexes. One is conditional reflexes and one more is unconditional reflexes. What do you mean by conditional? I'll give an example. We just mention whether it is conditional or unconditional. So moving away your hand when you're touching a hot object, is it conditional or unconditional?
Conditional.
Conditional, ma'am. Conditional.
Moving away the hand,
Unconditional.
touching hot object.
Unconditional, ma'am.
Yes, it is unconditional. What about the salivation? Salivation at the site of your favorite food. So when you see your favorite food, you'll get a saliva from your mouth, right? So that is conditional or unconditional? It is conditional, right? Because yes, it is conditional. So when you come across the reflexes, so there are two types of reflexes. One is conditional. So based on the condition, that is when you see a delicious food, right? When your mom is preparing the delicious food, especially your favorite food, you feel like the salivation. That is salivation starts in your mouth. That is a conditional. And unconditional is that is moving away. Any other example for unconditional apart from touching the hot object? Any other examples for unconditional?
Ma'am, light coming towards our eye.
Yes, yes, that is also an unconditional reflexes. Is that clear with the reflex action as well as reflexes? And when you come across the receptors, we were just speaking about only the receptors, but as per the receptors, so there are two types of receptors for your grade 10. One is the olfactory receptors, olfactory OLFACTORY. Olfactory receptors are the one which is present in our nose, which detects the smell. So as we say receptors are present, there are two receptors mentioned for your grade 10. The one is olfactory, that is OLFACTORY. Olfactory receptors is responsible for the smell. And one more is that is gustatory, GUSTATORY. This gustatory receptor is present in the tongue, which helps in sensing the taste. So they will ask you the question. GUSTATORY. These are the two receptors. They will ask you the question, mention the receptors involved in the following organs, that is tongue as well as nose. You have to mention the receptors. So gustatory receptors present in the tongue helps in sensing the taste. And when you come across the nose, that is olfactory receptors, which helps in that is sensing the smell. So is that clear? When you come across the last concept is under the nervous tissue. So we'll study about how the nervous tissue causes the action. So how does it causes the action? In the video itself I showed you. So that is the muscles move. How do the muscles move? We have studied about the muscles in the grade 9 itself, right? Under the tissues, muscular tissues. So how does the muscles move? For the nervous tissue also, they should cause action. The electrical impulses as per our that is mechanism, there is an affective organ which reaches the muscles. We have mentioned about muscles here. So suddenly we will respond. But how does this muscles play in responding? How does the muscles move? Whether it undergoes contraction, relaxation, or elongation, or whether it undergoes shortening. How does the muscles move?
Shortening, ma'am.
Only shortening?
Contraction, everything.
Yes, right. Whatever I mentioned, so all those will take place. That is, it changes their shape, right? It changes their shape and it gets shortening. Shortening is done. What happens if it shortens then?
We stretch.
Yes, exactly. For the stretching, right? For the stretching, we need to shorten. When you shorten, what happens? We will stretch our muscles. So even the muscles are also responsible for the nervous tissue. That is for causing any action. The muscles are also responsible. That is why here it is clearly mentioned as muscles. The muscles will shorten and there will be contraction as well as relaxation based on the responses. The muscles will also react. So this is about the muscle. That is, as we are studying about the coordination in animals. So the muscles also play an important role, and I have already explained about the voluntary as well as involuntary actions, right? So there also muscles, they play a very important role. So this completes completely the coordination in case of animals. Is it clear, everyone? Coordination in case of animals.
Yes, ma'am.
Coordination of animals. We studied about the first one is nervous tissue. There we studied about the single unit neuron.
Neurons.
Yes, next we studied about the classification of nervous system. The first one is central nervous system. The second one is peripheral nervous system. Under central nervous system, we studied about the spinal cord and brain. Under brain, again 3 parts, that is forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Under the peripheral nervous system, we studied about the spinal nerves as well as the cranial nerves. And in today's class, we studied about the structure of
Spinal
spinal
cord.
cord and the cross section of spinal cord. When we studied the structure of spinal cord, we explained about the skeletal, that is a bony structure. We explained about the meninges, nothing but the membranes. And the third one, which is the third one we studied, the cerebrospinal.
Cerebrospinal.
Yes.
Do it.
Yes, when you come across the cross section, in the cross section we studied about the dorsal horn, we studied about the ventral horn, we studied about the gray matter as well as white matter. So without knowing about the cross section, so you will not understand anything regarding the mechanism of reflex action. So dorsal horn, ventral horn, gray matter as well as white matter. And when you come across the mechanism, yes, Yashaswini, Vinod, please mute yourself. Divyansh, mute yourself. Yes. Mechanism of reflex action, that is stimulus, receptor organs, sensory nerves, dorsal horn, spinal cord, ventral horn, next motor nerve. It reaches the effective organ. So wherein I have explained the role of muscles, and finally you respond to that particular stimuli. So this is completely about the reflex action. So till now we have been studied about the sensory nerves, motor nerves, right? So what are the sensory nerves as well as motor nerves? Nobody asked me the question, what are the sensory nerves? What are these motor nerves? What are the sensory nerves, motor nerves? I just explained the sensory nerves will be present in the dorsal horn, motor nerves will be present in the ventral horn. I was expecting somebody will ask what is that sensory nerve, what is that motor nerve. So where are these nerves present? Under classification, we have mentioned about the nerves, right? Where are the nerves classified under what?
Sense organs.
I'm speaking about classification. Under classification, we are grouped different category wherein we are grouped the nerves, spinal nerves as well as cranial nerves. It comes under which category?
Spinal nerves.
Spinal nerves and cranial nerves are classified under peripheral nervous system, right? All the nerves are grouped under peripheral nervous system. So even the sensory nerves as well as these motor nerves, they are also under the category of the peripheral nervous system. All the nerves play a role under the peripheral nervous system, right? So understanding all the nerves are under peripheral nervous system. Where are your cranial as well as spinal nerves present? Under which classification?
Peripheral.
System.
Yes, under peripheral nervous system. Similarly, the sensory nerves as well as the motor nerves are also present under peripheral nervous system. When you come across the sensory nerve or the sensory neurons, it is nothing but the cranial nerves. Why I'm explaining you is in the sensory nerves, the cranial nerves which is present, they carry the nerve impulses to the organs. So under the sensory nerves, we have the cranial nerves. Under the motor nerves, we have again the cranial nerves. Again, when you come across the motor nerve, we have both the sensory as well as the motor nerves. Clear? When you come across the sensory nerve, it is having the cranial nerves. So where are the cranial nerves present? Cranial nerves are present under the classification of peripheral nervous system. Under the motor nerve, we have both the cranial nerves as well as spinal nerves. They work together. That is why we say them as the mixed nerve. Clear? So where does the electrical impulses carries them? As I said, the central nervous system, electrical impulses from the sense organ, and motor nerve, the electrical impulses from the spinal cord to the other organs. Now is it clear? The sensory nerves as well as the motor nerve? Both are under the category peripheral nervous system, wherein the spinal nerves plays a role in the sensory nerves. In the motor nerves, both the spinal as well as the cranial nerves will play a role. So this is completely about the reflex action. This is just for your extra information. I explain what is that sensory nerve as well as the motor nerve. So is that clear with the coordination in animals? Next, we will move to the coordination in case of plants. Complete coordination in animals, is it clear for everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now just watch one video regarding the coordination in case of plants and just let me know what do you understand. Everyone is able to see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and one more thing before starting the video, this is completely about the coordination. How does the coordination takes place in the plants? One just a simple example with a very interesting as well as amazing video. Please watch it very carefully and I'll ask you the question.
Fly trap. The sundew makes itself very attractive, oozing nectar across the brim of each leaf. But any visiting insect had better watch out for these 6 tiny hairs. This fly has to tread carefully. If it strikes one hair, it can carry on feeding. It can strike in less than 20 seconds and the fly is doomed. An electrical impulse is triggered and the leaf snaps shut in just a fraction of a second. The tips lock together like prison bars. If the fly is very big or very small, it may just manage to escape. But most are trapped and die. Days later, the trap reopens. All that remains is a husk. The plant has finished its meal and resets itself for its next victim.
Yes, what did you understand by this video? Whether the coordination takes place in plants?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Where is the coordination which took place in that video?
Venus flytrap.
Yes, that is a Venus flytrap. But where did the coordination takes place?
That's the tiny horn things.
Yes, in the tiny hairs as well as how did it close? Because of what it is closing. We are just explaining about the coordination in case of the humans, right? Even the coordination also takes place in plants. This is just one example for the coordination in plants, wherein the venous flytrap is it clear with that? You can see that is the sensation, that is when it touches the first small tiny hair, starts feeding. Thus, when it touches the second one, it will be trapped. That is again the coordination which takes place in the venous flytrap. That is one example. Similarly, we have a different plants wherein the coordination takes place, and how this coordination takes place in different types of plants. So the coordination may be different in different types of plants. This is just an introductory video for the coordination in plants. When we go in detail, I'll just explain you in the different plants, which is a main role which plays a coordination either in terms of hormones or it may be any types of chemicals which is present. As per in case of coordination in case of animals, we just mentioned we have a specialized nervous tissue, right? Because of the nervous tissue itself, we are coordinating, that is all the different organs which is present in the human body coordinate each other. But we were in the dynamo, that is where how come the coordination takes place in the plants. So this is one introductory concept for the coordination in plants. So similarly, the different plants has a different type of coordination that we will discuss in the next class, and I will explain in detail. So now is that clear, the introductory for the coordination in plants with the example of the venous flytrap? Was it an interesting video of venous flytrap?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Explain venous flytrap will catch insects. It needs nitrogen for that is a growth and development, but we were not in that is aware of how does it catches. We just say that it catches insect, but there is a certain coordination takes place wherein first hair, the second hair, when it touches, only then the trap will close. So these are the interesting concepts, right? Interesting as well as amazing things. So coordination in animals, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Time up and we will leave the meeting. So in the next class, we will start with the coordination in plants. As per the notes, I have given the complete notes till here. I just want everyone to complete the notes. And in the previous class, I mentioned to draw the brain drawing, right? And today you will draw the reflex action drawing. So there is a reflex action drawing, right, in your textbook. So you will draw that reflex action. All other notes has been given. So only the drawings has to be completed. So complete the notes till complete coordination in case of human beings. All the notes has been given in the last class itself. Only the brain drawing and thus reflex action drawing has to be drawn. Whoever has completed brain, you can start drawing today the reflex action. In the next class, we will start discussing about the coordination in case of plants.
Okay, ma'am.
Is it clear?
Okay, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.